the three-time Pulitzer Prize winner and the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman. It's great to be with you on النهار channels and platforms. Welcome.
Well, Dan, it's great to be with all my friends at النهار. I have a long history with النهار. I worked out of the النهار building as a junior reporter back in 1979, 1980. So great to be with you.
Yeah, Tom, well, we know well about this relation. You witnessed the complicated situation in Beirut, and here we are continuing our mission and battle from النهار offices. So thank you for being with us. So what does the assassinations of Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah mean for the Middle East from a geopolitical perspective?
Well, let me give you a kind of macro view of how I see things, how I see the world, and how this fits in, okay? So what was going on in the world before October 7th? Basically, what was going on was a giant struggle to define the post-Cold War world. So we had the Cold War world, then we had the post-Cold War world dominated by sort of American Pax Americana. And what was going on before October 7th was a struggle to define the post-Cold War world. And there are basically two coalitions competing. One I call the coalition of inclusion, okay, led by the United States, EU, NATO, and in the Middle East by the Abraham Accord countries, the Saudis. The coalition of inclusion saw the future of the world as being defined and benefited by more and more inclusion, more and more openness, and more integration. And it stretched this coalition from Japan and Korea through India, through the Middle East, and up, hopefully, through Europe. That was one coalition. And what was going on in the world on October 6th was that Ukraine was trying to join that coalition, okay, from its side. What was going on in the Middle East is that Israel and Saudi Arabia were trying to join the coalition in the Middle East. So in a sense, Ukraine was trying to join the West, and Israel was trying to join the East through a deal with the Palestinian Authority and Saudi Arabia and the United States. Basically, what happened on October 7th was that Russia, well, going back to its invasion of Ukraine, Russia tried to stop Ukraine from joining the West, and Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah tried to prevent Israel from joining the East. So Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, North Korea, sometimes China, depends what day, form a kind of giant coalition of resistance. That's what Hassan Nasrallah called it, the coalition of resistance versus this giant global coalition of inclusion. So that's what's been going on in the world. Now you have to see this war, therefore, as the war between the forces of inclusion and the forces of resistance in the Middle East, and Ukraine war is the same in Europe. If the forces of inclusion in Europe were to succeed, you would have a Europe whole and free and Russia totally isolated. If the forces of inclusion in the Middle East come together, you would have the biggest expansion of the inclusive Middle East since Camp David, and Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the whole resistance coalition completely isolated. So that's the struggle going on. Now, Israel's killing of Hassan Nasrallah and its weakening significantly of the party of God, Hezbollah, is a potential game changer under one condition. Because if Israel damages badly the party of God in Lebanon, it weakens this whole resistance coalition. But it will only be able to truly defeat this resistance coalition if Netanyahu defeats the party of God in Israel. You see, Israel also has a party of God, right-wing messianic settlers who have basically been telling Netanyahu what to do. The only way Israel's military defeat of the party of God in Lebanon can turn into a political defeat is if Netanyahu now takes on the party of God in Israel and forges that Palestinian, Saudi, US alliance. Then we have a very different world. That's how I see the situation.
Tom, how do you explain the ability of Israel to kill many of Hezbollah leaders, including its Secretary General? I'm talking here on intelligence level.
So, Diane, have you ever seen the Apple series called Tehran? It's a mythical streaming series about Israeli agents in Tehran. What you see in that series is, look, Israeli intelligence is very good. We know in the past they've had their successes, but they're not that good. You know how they penetrated Hezbollah? It's because so many people in Hezbollah are turning on the leadership. That's how they penetrated Iran. That's how they penetrate Hezbollah, because there's a lot of people out there in the Shia community, inside Iran, inside Lebanon, who are not at all happy with where Hezbollah has taken Lebanon or Iran is trying to take the Middle East. And Israel is good, but only if people on the inside were ready to actually turn against these organizations, it would never be able to penetrate them so deeply, so quickly, and so accurately.
And here let's recall the intelligence failure of Israel in October 7. So today, when you compare the two situations, things seem really different.
Well, that's because Israel, and it was a huge intelligence failure, thought Hamas was deterred. So they really took their eye off Hamas. They thought they were bought off with Qatari money and that Hamas was deterred. So they didn't devote that many intelligence assets and resources to penetrating Hamas. Instead, they thought the real enemy was Hezbollah. And so they focused all their intelligence assets on Hezbollah. You see the result, but that was because Israel mistakenly, from its point of view, foolishly even, believed its own propaganda that they had deterred Hamas. So they focused on Hezbollah.
When you kill people, you don't kill the idea. That's what Hezbollah supporters say today. How do you see Nasrallah's assassination affecting Hezbollah internally?
Well, I think it's a very good point. You can't kill an idea. The Hezbollah idea it's really fed by two sources of energy. One is internal to Lebanon, an organization that really began as a way of giving stronger representation to the Shia of Lebanon, stronger than Ummul had been able to provide. So there's an internal dynamic that is propelling Hezbollah that gave the Shia of Lebanon more power in the Lebanese equation. Then there's an external one, and the external one was to feed off the Palestinian conflict. So Hezbollah justified importing all these arms and creating an army outside the Lebanese army by saying we are defending Lebanon from Israel, Thawra Hat Nasr. And but once Israel withdrew in 2000, that excuse really was taken away from them. So they had to keep generating that excuse, basically, by arguing Israel hadn't left Shiba farms and all these little border disputes. So the internal Hezbollah, the one focused on creating greater power for Lebanese Shia, that's certainly not going to go away. But the external Hezbollah can only be defeated, I believe, as an idea. Again, what I said in the beginning, the party of God, external Hezbollah, can only be defeated if the Israelis take on their own party of God, these right-wing Jewish settler movements, and forge a partnership with Palestinians and work toward a two-state solution. That's the only way external Hezbollah can be defeated.
Yes. Tom, let's remember that after Haniyeh assassination, Sinwar was appointed. So, from your point of view, what will be the implications of the new leadership in Hezbollah?
We first of all don't know who the leader is, number one. Number two, that leader will have to go to sleep and put his head on the pillow every day and not know who he can trust. The person next to him, the person under him, because obviously Israel has penetrated Hezbollah so much. So that leader is going to have to spend a huge amount of time just protecting himself before he thinks about what to do next, I would say. The other thing that leader will notice is his sponsor, his regional sponsor, Iran, has been very quiet, very quiet. Iran is very happy to fight till the last Lebanese, till the last Yemeni, till the last Palestinian. Sahtain, tfaddal, all of you can get killed, but not us Iranians. And I think what Israel did has really intimidated the supreme leader in Iran. He ran off to a secret hiding place immediately. And if you listen to what he said after, not the morning after, but Bad Bukra, about Nasrallah killing, he said that's a problem for Hezbollah to handle, not us. So I think the Iranians now are themselves deterred more, and they're afraid of Hezbollah being completely destroyed. And then their deterrence, because Hezbollah was their deterrence weapon against Israel, will be destroyed as well. And then Iran will have a real problem. I think Iran has a real problem this morning, and there's a fight you can see going on inside Tehran of what to do next.
Why Tehran was unable to provide even minimal protection for Hezbollah leaders? What has Tehran lost?
Yeah, they've lost a lot. They've lost a lot of credibility. And again, I think if you stop and think about it, and if they stop and think about it, it means they are so penetrated. There's so many people in the Iranian system wanting to work against the regime that they can't trust anybody. So it shows you, this regime in Iran, in my view, is a terrible regime, first and foremost for the Iranian people, second and foremost for the region. What has been Iran's foreign policy? Hire Arab Shia to kill Arab Sunnis in Iraq, Yemen, and Syria and Lebanon, and fight till the last Lebanese, the last Palestinian, the last Iraqi, the last Yemeni. Well, they sit back in Tehran and they're all safe. No more. No more. They have got a real strategic problem today. And it could happen to a nicer bunch of guys.
How might Tehran respond to Nasrallah death? What scenarios?
I don't know. I think if you listen to what they're saying today, and literally I'm talking about just today, I don't know what will happen, Bukra or Bad Bukra, but if you listen today, I think they're really confused and a little frightened about what to do next.
Tom, it's unclear how Netanyahu will achieve his goals in returning the residents to the north, or how he will eliminate Hezbollah missile threat. Don't you think that he's rushing to declare victories?
I totally agree. I think it's way, way too soon. Israel has a different strategic problem in Gaza than in Lebanon. So in Gaza, Israel has no plan for the morning after. That is, no Palestinian partner who can govern Gaza instead of Hamas. But there is a potential partner out there, Abu Mazen or a reformed Palestinian Authority, that could do that job conceivably. Netanyahu just does not want to mobilize them. In Lebanon, he has a much bigger problem. You can smash Hezbollah all you want, but just one Hezbollah fighter firing one rocket a day at Metula or Rosh Hanikra or Sheba farms, okay? One rocket a day, and no Israelis can come back to the north. So in other words, Netanyahu needs a Lebanese government or backed up by some kind of international force that can replace Hezbollah in South Lebanon. And we are very, very far away from that. We're far away from Israel having defeated Hezbollah in Lebanon, fully defeated them, and we're very far away from a situation where the Lebanese government, and I would wish for this, could take the Lebanese army and send it down south of the Litani to the Israeli border, control that area, enable all the Lebanese who've had to flee from there to come home, and create a quiet border again.
How do you view the timing of Nصرالله assassination in relation to the US elections, especially when we talk about competition between Democrats and Republicans in supporting Israel?
It's a very good question, Diana. I don't see an immediate reaction that it necessarily benefits Biden and Harris or hurts Harris more than Trump. But that could change in 24 hours. My guess is Trump will come out and say, yes, go, great, Israel, go all the way to Beirut, and Biden will have to be more restrained. And maybe there you'll see some political differences in energy, but it's too early, Diana, to say how it's going to play out.
How do you see the role of technology influencing the future and the present of geopolitical conflicts?
Well, what we've seen in the Hezbollah-Israel war, something we've never seen before, a non-state actor, Hezbollah, having the ability of kind of mutual assured destruction with a state actor, Israel. Now, it turns out that the state actor moved first to destroy a lot of Hezbollah's missile capability, and Israel's anti-missile shield seems to have worked well enough. So up to now, Hezbollah has not been able to hurt, say, Tel Aviv the way Israel can hurt Beirut. But whether that will change, whether that is because Hezbollah has held back, whether it's because Hezbollah now has lost its leadership and no one can even give the order or follow the order, I don't know. So I would wait generally for a final conclusion about that. But macro, we are entering a world of superpowers. Israel is like a regional superpower, and super empowered resistance fighters. That's Hezbollah. They're not a superpower, but they are super empowered. They now have precision weapons that can do potentially a lot of damage to Israel. So that's a new one. If you compare it, always remember, Diana, the last time Israel and Hezbollah fought was when? 2006. That was a year before this was invented. Mm-hmm. That was the last time they fought, 1 year before the iPhone was invented. So what you're seeing since then is the ability of technology, this is just a symbol of it, to super empower these angry resistance forces that aren't states. And the long-term implications of that will be profound.
How have the wars in Lebanon and Gaza impacted the idea of peace between Arabs and Israel?
It's a very good question. And what I have been arguing since the beginning is that Israel has the opportunity of a lifetime to forge an opening now with the moderate forces in the region, the Abraham Accord countries in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, like never before, and really isolate the resistance forces, but only if Israel is ready to pursue a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority. That is the keystone of everything. And if Israel were to do that, Hezbollah, Iran would lose their excuse for why they must drag Lebanon into a war, because they have to, fight for the liberation of Palestine. If Israel can, I repeat what I said earlier, if Israel can defeat its own party of God, the Jewish party of God, now that it's defeated the Muslim Shia party of God, only if that happens and it leads to a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians, then, and only then, will we really see a Middle East peace.
Yes, Tom, it's very meaningful to be with you and to listen to your analysis in this critical time for us here in Beirut.
My pleasure.